I sat on an old wooden rocking chair on the front porch, a cup of hot black coffee in my hand, my eyes fixed on the Rocky Mountains as they slowly turned a blazing orange under the sunset. The Montana wind drifted gently across the tall grass fields, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine, a scent I had known for nearly 4 decades. This ranch, a vast piece of land worth about $3.2 million, located on the outskirts of Bozeman, was not just a home. It was my entire life. It was where Henry and I built everything together, where we raised Megan, where I taught her how to ride a horse, where Henry used to sit and read the newspaper every Sunday morning. Now at 68 years old, I live alone. But I have never felt lonely. Not until a few days ago. If you are watching this video, please press like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me which state you are watching from. California, Texas, or right here in Montana, I truly enjoy reading those lines. Now let me tell you how this story began. Believe me, it is crazier than any daytime drama on American television you have ever seen. My name is Lauren Smith. People usually call me Lauren or Mrs. Smith. I taught English literature at a high school for 35 years, and I retired 5 years ago. And exactly 4 days ago, I discovered that my daughter Megan Hayes, 40 years old, along with her husband Victor Hayes, had sold my ranch without asking me, without a single signature from me. Yes, they sold it. The land that Henry and I paid off to the bank dollar by dollar. The land where we laid Henry to rest, according to his wishes, after he passed away in 2019. Not buried, of course. I am not foolish enough to break the law. We scattered his ashes under the old oak tree in the southwest corner, the place he loved most. Last Tuesday morning, I was sitting in the kitchen, sipping coffee and doing a crossword puzzle from the local newspaper when the front door swung open. No knocking, no call ahead. Victor walked in as if he owned the place. His hair slicked back with gel, an expensive tailored suit, and that smug smile he always wore in moments when he thought he had just won big. "Good morning, Lauren," he said. His voice was sweet like syrup, but full of condescension. I did not look up from the crossword. Victor, 7 letters for untrustworthy. Why do I feel like the answer is standing right in front of me? He pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited, placing a thick envelope on the kitchen table. "We need to talk." I set down my pencil and finally looked him straight in the eye. Victor Hayes was the kind of man who believed an Armani suit could hide the fact that he had no morals at all, like a thin layer of chocolate covering an empty candy bar. About what, he slid the envelope toward me. "The ranch has been sold. This is your share." I stared at the envelope as if he had just handed me a dead rat. "My share, $16,000, he said, puffing up his chest like a rooster that had just learned to crow. "After expenses, commissions, taxes, of course." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I laughed. Not a sarcastic laugh, not a forced laugh, a real laugh. I laughed until tears streamed down my face and I had to grab a tissue to wipe my eyes. Victor stared at me, his confidence starting to flicker like a candle in a storm. "What is so funny?" he asked, his voice rising an octave. "Oh, Victor," I said between bursts of laughter, "you have no idea what you just did." His face darkened. "Listen, Lauren, you are getting old. Megan and I thought it was time to liquidate the assets and move you into a good care facility in the city. There are activities people your age in 24-hour care. We are doing this because we care about you." "How thoughtful," I replied. My smile faded, replaced by another one, the kind of smile that would make even a great white shark hesitate. "And how exactly did you manage that? Because the last time I checked, my name was still on the title." Victor waved his hand as if brushing away a fly. "Megan has power of attorney. Everything is 100% legal. The paperwork was filed 7 months ago when you had severe dizziness. The doctor recommended it to protect you." I nodded slowly, still calm. Severe dizziness. Interesting. I remember every single day of the past 7 months, and I have not seen a doctor for dizziness even once. He stood up and adjusted his tie. "The new owner will take possession next week. You should start packing. We will help you move." After he left, I sat there staring at the $16,000 envelope on the table. $16,000. For a ranch worth $3.2 million. Whether Megan really had power of attorney or not, which I seriously doubted, this was still a robbery in broad daylight. But at 68, after everything life had thrown at me, losing my husband, raising a child alone, teaching thousands of troublesome students, dealing with demanding parents and short-sighted administrators, I had learned one thing. Sometimes the best revenge is not shouting or crying. Sometimes it is simply knowing a secret that your enemy has no idea exists. And Victor Hayes had no idea what he had just sold. This is the story of how a 68-year-old woman turned her betrayers into federal prisoners. This is the story of how a peaceful ranch in Montana became a ticking time bomb for a massive corruption network. And believe me, this is only the beginning. After Victor stepped out the door and the sound of his truck faded along the dirt road leading to the highway, I remained seated at the kitchen table for a long while. The air inside the house suddenly felt heavy, strangely heavy, as if the entire ranch was holding its breath with me. I picked up the envelope. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something else, a mix of pain and a rising anger boiling quietly inside me. I opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $16,000, a few property sale documents, and a photograph. It was a copy of the power of attorney that Victor had just shown off. My signature was at the bottom, clearly forged. The strokes were shaky. They did not match the steady handwriting I had maintained through 35 years of teaching. Even someone who was not an expert could see it immediately. It was not even done professionally. That was the first sign that told me this was not a perfect plan. It was a foolish scheme by greedy people. I took a deep breath and forced myself to stay calm. Megan Hayes, my daughter, now 40 years old, used to be a sweet girl. She helped me plant flowers in the garden. She used to run out to collect the mail every afternoon. But after she married Victor, everything changed. She moved into a high-end lifestyle in Bozeman, designer handbags, luxury vacations, and an Instagram feed filled with perfect life photos with captions like blessed and grateful. I knew she was influenced by her husband, but I never imagined she would go this far, to betray her own mother for money. I remembered Victor's words, "Megan has power of attorney. Everything is 100% legal. The paperwork was filed 7 months ago when you had severe dizziness." Dizziness. I had never been so dizzy that I needed a doctor. It was a blatant lie. They thought I was old, easy to deceive, easy to push into a nursing home so they could freely spend the $3.2 million paid in cash by a development company. At that moment, I laughed out loud in the kitchen. The sound echoed so sharply that I had to cover my own mouth. Not because I was happy, but because I knew the true value of what they had just sold, and because I knew what still remained on that land. Something they had no idea about. I did not lose my temper. I did not call my daughter to yell at her. I did not cry. Instead, I did something very calm, very American, something any Montana woman who has lived through hardship would know how to do. I quietly switched on the recording function on my old iPhone inside my coat pocket. Even though the conversation with Victor had already ended, I recorded everything from memory. Every detail, every word, every tone of his smug voice. I knew that one day these recordings would become more valuable than gold. I sat there looking out the window. The sunset was fading behind the mountains. My heart was beating fast. Not from fear, but from a new sense of determination. They thought they had won. They thought this 68-year-old woman would quietly pack her things and disappear. But they did not know that this ranch was not just land. It held a secret. A secret my husband Henry had kept for 7 years before he passed away in 2019. A secret powerful enough to bring down an entire corruption network in Montana. And I, Lauren Smith, would be the one to set off that bomb. I stood up. I placed the envelope into a drawer. Then I whispered to myself, "Victor, Megan, you just made a very big mistake, and this old woman is about to show you how serious that mistake really is." After Victor left, I could not sit still any longer. The anger had faded. In its place came a cold clarity, the kind of clarity only people who have lived through many storms can understand. I knew I could not do this alone. I needed a real lawyer, not an overconfident child playing at being one. The next morning, I drove my old Ford pickup into downtown Bozeman. I went to the office of Ethan Caldwell, 28 years old, fresh out of law school, recommended by a friend from my book club. The office was small and modern. It smelled of fresh coffee and newly printed paper. Ethan sat behind his desk. His suit was slightly too big for him. His smile was confident, the kind of smile that suggests he has already won hundreds of major cases. I handed him the envelope and the photo of the power of attorney. He flipped through a few pages, raised an eyebrow, then leaned back in his chair as if he were watching a comedy. "Mrs. Smith, I will be honest," he began, his voice polished but hollow. "This power of attorney appears valid. The signature is close enough for the court to accept. And if your daughter really filed it when you had severe dizziness, as stated in the records, then it will be difficult to prove fraud. We can try to appeal, but the cost is high and the chance of success is low. You should consider accepting the money and moving to a new place. At your age, many people choose peace over a legal fight." I looked at him. I said nothing for a few seconds. Then I stood up, collected my documents, and gave him a small smile. The kind of smile Henry used to call the calm before the storm. "Thank you, Ethan, but I did not come here to be told to accept defeat. I came to find someone who believes me." I turned and walked out, leaving Ethan sitting there, his mouth slightly open, as if he had just been splashed with cold water. He probably thought this old woman would come back begging for help. He was wrong. On the way home, I called my oldest friend, Nancy Whitaker, 70 years old. She had worked as a county court clerk for 32 years before retiring. Now she volunteers at the Bozeman Public Library. Her memory is still sharp, and her network is wide. Nancy picked up on the second ring. Her voice was warm as always. "Lauren, dear, what is wrong? Your voice sounds different." I told her everything, short and direct. Nancy was silent for a moment. Then I heard her sigh heavily. "Oh my God. Megan and that Victor. They did that to you. Listen, do not waste time with young lawyers. You need Evelyn Ramirez. She is at Chen and Associates. She specializes in elder fraud. Evelyn has never lost a case involving a forged power of attorney. I will call her first. Go now, Lauren. Do not wait." I went to Evelyn Ramirez's office that same afternoon. Evelyn was about 52, Hispanic, black hair with strands of silver tied neatly back, sharp eyes, a smile that told you she had seen every dirty trick in the book. Her office was clean, efficient, no fake luxury, no empty promises. I handed her all the documents. Evelyn reviewed each page slowly, carefully. Then she set them down and looked straight into my eyes. "Mrs. Smith, this power of attorney is forged. The signature does not match. The strokes are shaky. The angle is different from your natural handwriting. There is no medical record supporting this so-called severe dizziness. No doctor, no tests, no prescriptions. This is clear fraud. We can file for a temporary restraining order immediately to stop the transfer of ownership." I let out a breath, but I was not finished. I knew I had to tell her the rest, the part I had never told anyone, not even Megan. "Evelyn, if we win this case, we will not just get the ranch back. There will be something much bigger." She raised an eyebrow, gestured for me to continue. I took a deep breath. "My husband, Henry Carter, passed away in 2019. He worked as a county zoning inspector for 29 years. His job was to review development applications, study environmental impact, and approve land zoning. In 2015, Henry discovered a major corruption network. Large real estate companies were destroying wetlands, wiping out wildlife habitats, polluting water sources. All approved through bribery. Evelyn wrote quickly. Her eyes never left me. Henry collected evidence, photos from the sites, recorded calls, bank transfers, internal emails. He was about to submit everything to the FBI. Then he died suddenly. I have always suspected it was not a natural heart attack, but I stayed silent because I had no proof. I paused. My voice trembled slightly. Henry hid the evidence in 3 waterproof containers, at 3 locations on the ranch, under the old oak tree in the southwest corner, behind the barn under an old cellar, and near the small stream to the north. They have been there for 7 years, waiting for the right moment. Evelyn set down her pen. looked at me carefully. And the company that bought your land is Summit Ridge Development, LLC, yes. She tapped her fingers lightly on the desk. Summit Ridge is owned by Raymond Ray Caldwell, 58 years old, a real estate billionaire, polished on the outside. But in Montana real estate circles, everyone knows he is dangerous. He has been linked to multiple environmental destruction cases, but no one has ever caught him. If your husband was investigating him, then your ranch is now sitting on evidence that could put Ray and his entire network in prison for life. I nodded. That is why I laughed when Victor handed me $16,000. They thought they sold a piece of land. They did not realize they sold a ticking time bomb. Evelyn smiled. The smile of a predator who has just realized the prey has walked straight into a trap. Mrs. Smith, we will get your ranch back, but more than that, we will make them pay. I will file for the restraining order today. And you, prepare yourself. Because when we dig deeper, there will be many people who do not want this secret to come out. I left Evelyn's office feeling both relieved and uneasy. For the first time since Victor walked into my kitchen, I no longer felt alone. I had a real ally, and deep inside, I knew Henry was smiling somewhere. He always believed the truth would win, no matter how long it took. But I also knew one thing. Ray Caldwell would not give up easily. And when he discovers what is buried under his land, everything is about to become very, very dangerous. After leaving Evelyn's office, I drove home in a state of excitement mixed with anxiety so strong that my hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. The sun had fully set behind the Rocky Mountains. Only deep purple streaks remained across the Montana sky. I knew I could not wait any longer. Henry's secret had been buried underground for 7 years. Now it was time to wake it up. I stopped the truck in front of the porch, turned off the engine, then took out my phone. My fingers moved through the contact list, stopping at a name I had not called in 7 years. Special Agent Karen Delgado. Karen had been Henry's partner in his final years. She was 45, her voice always steady, professional, the kind of person you know would never abandon a teammate. When the call connected, my heart pounded like it did when I was young. Lauren, Karen's voice came through immediately, surprised, but warm. My God. It has been so long. What is going on? I did not waste time. I told her everything, from Victor walking into my kitchen to the $16,000 check, the forged power of attorney, my meeting with Evelyn, and what Henry had buried beneath the ranch. Karen listened without interrupting. When I said the name Raymond Ray Caldwell, I heard her draw in a sharp breath. Summit Ridge, Ray Caldwell. Are you telling me your ranch belongs to him now? Yes. Karen was silent for a few seconds. Then her voice sharpened. Henry once told me that one day you would call. He believed you would be the one to finish what he could not. Stay where you are. I am coming, and I am bringing someone with me. 2 hours later, Karen and her partner arrived at a small roadside cafe about 20 miles from my ranch, far enough to avoid unwanted attention. Special Agent Luke Rivera, 34 years old. He walked in with the solid presence of a former combat engineer. Rough hands, calm eyes, sharp. Luke was a specialist in covert operations, the kind of man who could dig a hole in the middle of the night without anyone noticing. We sat in a quiet corner. Karen placed a tablet on the table and spoke directly. We will let the sale go through, but under close FBI surveillance, Ray Caldwell believes he has just bought clean land. We will let him keep believing that until he starts digging. At that point, Lauren, you are the key. You are the only one who knows the exact locations of the 3 evidence containers. We will retrieve the main one first, the one under the oak tree, before Ray's team gets to it. Luke nodded, his voice low. I will help you dig. I know how to do it quietly, but we have to move fast and stay invisible. If Ray suspects anything, everything falls apart. I felt a surge of energy run through me. For the first time in days, I did not feel alone. I had a real team behind me. But Montana is a small place. People still drop by unannounced. The next morning, as I sat on the porch reviewing Henry's hand-drawn map, Ben Harlan drove up in his old pickup. 72 years old, a retired hunter. He carried a bag of fresh venison just like always. "Lauren, best venison of the season," Ben said with a wide grin, setting the bag on the table. "You look a little tired." "Something wrong with Megan and that Victor," I smiled gently, kept my voice steady. "Just family matters, Ben. Thank you for the venison. I will make you a stew this weekend." He nodded, did not ask more. That is the Montana way. People know when to stay silent. He gave my shoulder a light pat, then drove off. I watched him go, quietly grateful for the warmth he brought in the middle of a coming storm. But later that afternoon, when I slipped back onto the ranch to check the oak tree location, my heart nearly stopped. I saw them, tiny hidden cameras, mounted on tree trunks, under the roof of the barn, even near the stream. Ray's team had installed them, clearly to monitor the entire property before construction began. These were not ordinary cameras. They were professional grade, connected directly to a phone system. I froze for a moment. Then instinct took over. Henry and I had once installed a security system on this very ranch. I knew every blind spot, every shadow. I lowered myself, moved slowly, like I used to when I was younger, avoiding the dead zones of the cameras, using my old knowledge to observe without being seen. Cold sweat ran down my spine. If I were caught now, everything would end before it even began. I returned to my truck, my hands still trembling, but my resolve stronger than ever. Ray Caldwell thought he controlled everything. He was wrong. Karen called shortly after, her voice serious. "Lauren, we need to move fast. Luke and I are ready. Tomorrow night we retrieve the main container. But prepare yourself, because once Ray realizes the evidence is gone, he will not stop at anything." I looked out at the mountains, now swallowed by darkness, and whispered softly to myself, "Henry, my love, we are about to finish what you started." After Karen and Luke left, I returned to the ranch with a clear plan in my mind. We could not wait for Ray Caldwell to start digging. We had to act first. And the only person who could do that without raising suspicion was me, the former owner, the mother who was collecting memories before being forced to leave. The next morning, I called Megan. I softened my voice on purpose, almost pleading, the kind of voice my daughter had known since she was little. "Megan, my dear, I just want to take a few of your father's things. The old toolbox in the garage and the fishing chair he used to sit on under the oak tree. I just want to keep a few memories. Can I come and get them?" There was silence on the other end. I could imagine Megan biting her lip, glancing at Victor sitting beside her. Finally, she sighed. "Fine, Mom, but be quick. I have a yoga class at 4 in the afternoon, and do not do anything strange." I smiled into the phone. "Thank you, Megan. I will not take long." When I drove my old Ford pickup down the familiar path to the ranch, my heart was pounding so hard that I had to remind myself to breathe. Megan was already there, standing on the front porch, arms crossed, watching me with a mix of suspicion and guilt. She wore expensive workout clothes, her hair tied high. She no longer looked like the little girl who used to run after me in the flower garden. "You are here," Megan said, her voice slightly stiff. "Just take what you need and go." "I do not want to stay here long," I nodded, keeping my expression soft and sad. "I understand, my dear." I walked straight into the garage, opened Henry's old toolbox. Inside, just as I remembered, a compact metal detector and a folding shovel. I slipped them into an old cloth bag, then walked outside, heading toward the old oak tree in the southwest corner. Megan followed behind me, her high heels sinking into the soft ground, clearly uncomfortable. "Where are you going? Why all the way out here? Your father's fishing chair," I replied calmly. "He liked to sit here and read the newspaper every morning. I want to keep that chair." I pointed to the old aluminum chair under the oak tree. Megan sighed, but did not stop me. She stood a few meters away, scrolling on her phone, probably texting Victor, reporting that Mom is just taking some old stuff. Nothing suspicious. What Megan did not realize was this. As I bent down to pick up the chair, I quietly counted my steps. 15 steps to the northeast from the trunk, toward a large rock, the exact spot Henry had marked in his old notebook. The main container lay 3 feet below. Inside waterproof casing he had built himself. I folded the chair, placed it in the bag, then walked back to the truck. On the way, I glanced into the rearview mirror. Megan had turned away. She was on the phone, her voice low, but I could still hear it. He is fine. Mom is just taking some old things. Nothing strange. I smiled to myself. She still believed everything was under control. That night, the sky was completely dark. No moon, only stars scattered across the vast Montana sky. I met Luke and Karen near the old wooden path to the north, a hidden route Henry once used to move around the ranch unnoticed. Luke was dressed in black, carrying professional digging tools. I wore a thick coat, holding a small flashlight. "Are you ready, Mrs.?" Smith Luke asked, his voice low, confident. I nodded. I have been ready for 7 years. We moved through the woods, our steps quiet, like ghosts. I led the way, guided by memory. Every bush, every rock. When we reached the oak tree, Luke swept the metal detector. A soft beep sounded immediately. "Got it," he whispered. "Metal, about 3 feet deep. Exactly where you said." He began digging. Fast, quiet. Each layer of soil carefully moved aside to avoid leaving clear traces. I stood watch, scanning the darkness. My heart pounded. Every sound of the shovel hitting the ground made me flinch. After about 12 minutes, Luke whispered, "I have it." He cleared the soil, revealing the corner of a waterproof metal container. I dropped to my knees, my hands trembling as I touched it, the very thing Henry had buried 7 years ago, hoping one day it would be found. "That is it," I whispered, tears slipping down silently. "Henry, you did it!" Luke lifted the container, then quickly filled the hole back in. We were about to leave. Then suddenly the sound of engines. Headlights cut through the darkness, aimed straight at the oak tree. My heart nearly stopped. "Vehicle incoming," Luke hissed into his radio. Less than 2 minutes. There was no time to run. Luke pulled me behind a large rock near the creek, the only possible hiding place. We crouched low, holding our breath. 3 trucks from Ray's team stopped right at the oak tree. Doors opened. At least 5 men stepped out, carrying powerful lights, professional digging equipment, motorized shovels, advanced metal detectors, even a portable generator, then a voice, low, cold, commanding. "Ray Caldwell. Dig all night. Do not miss anything. He said the evidence is here. Find it." I gripped Luke's hand tightly. My heart was pounding so loudly I was afraid they would hear it. Ray knew. He had known for a long time. And now he was digging in the exact spot we had just emptied. They began scanning, then digging. Machines roared into the night. Luke whispered in my ear, "We wait. If we move now, they will see us." We stayed still. The damp earth clung to us, our breathing shallow. Every minute felt like an hour. Ray paced back and forth, his voice growing more irritated. "Why is there nothing? The GPS shows this exact location." After nearly 25 minutes, Luke received a signal from Karen through his earpiece. "Beta team in position. Withdraw through the northern route." Now, we moved, slow, silent, slipping through bushes, avoiding the beams of light. Following the old wooden path Henry once used to stay unseen. Behind us, the sound of digging continued, mixed with curses from Ray's team as they realized there was nothing there. When we finally reached Luke's vehicle, my whole body trembled with adrenaline. Luke looked at me, gave a small smile. "Mrs. Smith, that was a perfect extraction. Henry would be proud." I held the evidence container tightly in my arms, tears falling again. "He will be even prouder when we bring them into the light." We drove off into the darkness, leaving the ranch behind, drowned in the desperate sound of Ray Caldwell's machines digging for nothing. After Luke drove me back to the temporary apartment in Bozeman, I sat alone in the dark, holding Henry's box of evidence tightly against my chest. My hands were still trembling. The cold sweat had not yet dried, but inside my heart was a strange feeling, part relief, part excitement so intense it almost brought me to tears. We had won 1 round. We had taken what Ray Caldwell had been hunting for, but I knew very well this was not the end. A man like Ray never gives up easily. And just as I expected, Less than 24 hours later, while I was sitting in a rocking chair on the porch, my phone rang. An unknown number. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. The voice on the other end was cold, polite, but carried the unmistakable authority of someone used to giving orders. "Is this Mrs. Lauren Smith? This is Raymond Caldwell. We need to talk." My heart pounded. Ray Caldwell himself. No pretense, no games. He knew. I kept my voice steady, using the familiar tone of an old Montana woman. "Mr. Caldwell, I am listening." He went straight to the point, lowering his voice. "I know you have something I need. The documents your husband hid. I am willing to pay $2.5 million in cash for the exact location. No questions, no trouble. You take the money, I take the documents, and everyone walks away happy. You keep the farm, I keep my project. A fair deal." I almost laughed out loud. $2.5 million. He thought money could buy my silence. But Karen and Luke and I had already prepared for this scenario the night before. I pretended to hesitate, letting my voice tremble like a frightened old woman. "Why, you mean it, $2.5 million, absolutely. I only need you to meet me tonight, midnight, at the farm. Bring the map or whatever Henry left behind. We will finish this within 1 hour." I took a deep breath, then said the line we had practiced with the FBI. "All right, Mr. Caldwell, I will come. But you must come alone. No one else." He gave a soft chuckle. "Of course, alone." I ended the call. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear. This was excitement. Karen had heard the entire conversation through the microphone I was wearing. She spoke immediately through my earpiece. "We have him, Lauren. Midnight. Luke and the task force will be in position. You just stay calm and say the code phrase when needed." That night at midnight, I drove back to the farm once again. The place was completely dark. Only my headlights swept across the familiar shadows of the trees. When I stopped the car, Ray was already there, standing beside a black SUV, but not alone as he had promised. 3 large bodyguards in black stood beside him. Their hands were inside their jackets, clearly hiding guns. They looked at me like prey. Ray smiled and stepped forward. "Mrs. Smith, thank you for coming. Where is the map?" I pulled a folded sheet of paper from my pocket, the fake map Luke had carefully drawn. On it were 3 locations. One was the oak tree that had already been dug up. The other 2 were the real backup containers, now secured and monitored by the FBI since the night before. "Here," I said, my voice trembling on purpose. 3 locations. Henry was very careful. "Which one do you want first?" Ray took the map, shining his flashlight on it. His eyes lit up with greed. He turned to his men. "Start digging. All 3 spots. Tonight. Do not miss anything. I want everything in my hands before sunrise." The 3 bodyguards immediately took out professional digging equipment and moved toward the marked locations. Ray looked back at me, his voice low and threatening. "You better pray this map is real. Otherwise, you and your daughter will face more trouble than you can imagine." That was the moment. I took a deep breath, looked straight into his eyes, and spoke clearly, slowly, the code phrase we had agreed on. "Mr. Caldwell, I hope you brought full insurance for this operation." The moment the words insurance policy left my mouth, everything exploded. Floodlights burst on from every direction. Engines roared. The FBI task force rushed out of the darkness like summoned shadows, pistols, rifles, red laser sights sweeping across Ray and his 3 men. Karen Delgado stepped forward, first her voice cold and commanding through a loudspeaker. "FBI, do not move. Raymond Caldwell, you are under arrest for conspiracy to steal federal evidence, unlawful trespassing, and witness intimidation. Put your hands behind your back." Ray's bodyguards did not even have time to draw their weapons before being subdued. Ray stood frozen, the fake map still in his hand. His face turned pale under the harsh lights. He looked at me, shock and fury in his eyes. You old woman." I stepped closer, my voice calm but powerful, the voice of a wife who had waited 7 years for justice. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell, this old woman just sent you to prison for life. Henry Carter sends his regards." Luke placed the handcuffs on Ray while Karen read him his rights. The sharp click of metal echoed through the quiet Montana night. I stood there, the cold wind brushing through my hair, tears falling silently, not tears of fear but of release. "Henry, my love, we did it. My friends that moment felt as if my husband was standing right beside me. But the story is not over yet. Ray Caldwell is not the one at the top, and what happened next was far more terrifying. After the FBI placed handcuffs on Ray Caldwell and put him into the vehicle, I remained standing alone beneath the old oak tree. The cold Montana wind cut through my hair. I held Henry's box of evidence tightly against my chest. Tears fell silently. Henry, my love, we did it. But I knew this was not the end. Ray Caldwell was not the one at the top. He was only a pawn in a much larger game. And I was right. Less than 48 hours later, Ray chose to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. Inside a secured FBI interrogation room, he told everything. Victor Hayes, my son-in-law, had been laundering money for his network for 5 years. Every dollar from illegal projects, from filling wetlands to bribing officials, had flowed through Victor's construction company. The sale of my farm was only a small part of a much larger plan. Ray needed access to Henry's evidence so he could destroy it before the federal court reopened the case. I sat in Karen Delgado's office, gripping the chair tightly as I listened to the recording. My heart felt like it was being crushed. My daughter Megan did not just know. She helped her husband cover it up. I felt a deep pain, but also a firm resolve. I would not let them face life in prison. They had to pay, but I was still their mother. The next morning at dawn, the FBI raided Megan and Victor's house. They were arrested on the spot. Their faces turned pale. Their hands were cuffed behind their backs. I watched from a distance, sitting in Karen's car. Megan broke down in tears when she saw me. Victor stayed silent, his eyes filled with panic. That afternoon, I visited them in the holding room. Megan looked at me through the glass. Her eyes were swollen. Her voice trembled. "Mom, can you forgive me? We did not know it was this serious." I looked straight into my daughter's eyes. My voice was calm but full of emotion. "Megan, the time for apologies passed long ago. But I am still your mother. If both of you fully cooperate with the FBI, tell them everything about Ray's network, I will ask them to reduce your sentence. From 12 to 15 years, down to 2 or 3 years with restitution and community service. But you must choose. Either keep hiding the truth and lose everything, or face it and still have a chance to make things right." Victor lowered his head. His voice was hoarse. I will cooperate," Megan cried. "I will too, Mom. I am sorry. I am truly sorry." I left the holding room with tears in my eyes, but my heart felt lighter. It was not full forgiveness, but it was a door left open. The way we do things in America, justice is strict, but there is still a chance for redemption. But what Ray revealed next was far bigger. Karen called me to the FBI office that evening. Thick files were spread across the desk. She looked at me, her voice serious. "Lauren, the network does not stop at Ray Caldwell. It is bigger than we thought. The one at the top is federal judge Arthur Langford, 67 years old. He has been on the bench for 16 years, approving every major project in Montana, from shopping centers to luxury resorts, all based on falsified reports, bribery, and environmental destruction. Henry was used by him to sign off on many of those projects without knowing the truth." I dropped into the chair. My blood ran cold. Judge Langford, the man the entire state once respected. But that was not all. I took a deep breath, then pulled a small object from my pocket, something I had kept hidden for 7 years. A small glass vial filled with white powder. Karen, Henry did not die from a natural heart attack. The night before he died in 2019, he told me that the next morning he would submit all the evidence to the FBI. He was healthy. He was even happy. But the next morning, he was gone. I placed the vial on the table. I found this in Henry's coffee cup. I had it tested privately. It was digitalis, a poison that stops the heart, almost impossible to detect without specialized testing. The one who poisoned him was Judge Langford's wife. She used to be a pharmacist. She had access to the drug, and she was forced by her husband. Karen stared at the vial, her eyes wide. "My God, Lauren, you kept this secret for 7 years. I had to wait. I knew the man who killed my husband was still out there. Now it is time." The FBI moved fast. They exhumed Henry's body along with several other victims connected to the network people who had supposedly died in accidents over the years. The forensic results confirmed it. The same poison digitalis. Everything matched perfectly. Just 2 days later, Judge Arthur Langford and his wife were arrested at their home in Helena. Images of him, once a proud figure on the bench, being led away in handcuffs spread across national news channels. His wife broke down in tears and confessed everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. I sat in front of the television watching it all. Tears streamed down my face. Henry, at last, justice has come to you. Not only for you, but for everyone who lost their lives for daring to tell the truth. But deep inside, one burden still remained. Megan and Victor would still have to pay for what they had done, even with reduced sentences. As for me, I had taken back my farm, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. After Judge Langford and his wife were placed in handcuffs, everything moved fast like a storm. The federal trials began just a few months later. They were the biggest trials Montana had seen in many years. Ray Caldwell, in the suit that once made him look like a real estate king, now stood before the court, his face pale. Judge Arthur Langford, the man who once sat at the highest bench, his voice echoing like the law itself, now lowered his head as the charges were read aloud. 5 counts of intentional murder, leading an organized criminal enterprise, bribery of public officials, large-scale environmental destruction. His wife, once a respected pharmacist, stood beside him. Her eyes were red. She had fully cooperated in exchange for leniency. Victor and Megan also faced their own trial, but because they cooperated early, revealing every money laundering transaction, every bribe Victor had handled, their sentences were significantly reduced, from 12 to 15 years, down to 2 to 3 years, along with restitution and community service. When the sentence was announced, Megan broke down in tears in the courtroom. I sat in the back row looking at my daughter, now smaller, more fragile, and more remorseful than I had ever seen her. Victor kept his head down. He did not dare look at anyone. I did not go near them after the trial. Forgiveness is a long journey, and I am still walking that road. As for me, I got the farm back. The court voided the entire transaction due to fraud. Summit Ridge Development LLC was dissolved. The wide land outside Bozeman once again carried the name Lauren Smith, but I did not keep it for myself. I chose to donate the entire farm to the state of Montana, turning it into a public nature reserve, with one condition: to build the Henry Carter Memorial Grove, a memorial garden for Henry and for all the victims who lost their lives for daring to expose the truth behind the corruption network. The state accepted immediately. They built a stone monument engraved with Henry's name, along with many others, people who were said to have died in accidents but were in fact victims of greed and power. 6 months later, on an October evening at sunset, I stood in that memorial garden. Young trees swayed gently in the wind. Wild Montana flowers bloomed around the stone. The last light of the day painted the Rocky Mountains in deep shades of gold and orange. Beside me stood Evelyn Ramirez, the lawyer who had fought with me from the very beginning. Karen Delgado, Henry's friend, now my friend. And several local residents, including Ben Harlan, still carrying a bag of deer meat, just like always. I looked up at the monument. I read my husband's name carved into the stone. Then I turned to everyone and smiled, a real smile, no longer forced. Justice took 7 years to arrive, I said, my voice soft in the wind. But in the end it came. And sometimes the old woman gets the last laugh. Everyone laughed. A few people clapped softly. Ben patted my shoulder. "You did well, Lauren. Henry would be proud." I nodded. Tears fell quietly, but this time they were tears of peace. The farm was no longer mine alone. But it would always be home. Henry's home. A home for truth. A home for those who dared to stand up. I watched the sunset fade behind the mountains and whispered into the wind. "Thank you, Henry. I have finished it." My dear friends, that is my whole story. The story of a 68-year-old woman in Montana who once thought she had lost everything, but in the end found the strength to change it all. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If you have ever been treated unfairly, if you have ever felt small in front of powerful people, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. Do not forget to like if this story touched you. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next true stories. And leave a comment telling me where you are watching from: California, Texas, New York, or even Vietnam. I read every single comment. Thank you. And remember, never underestimate an old woman from Montana. We may be old, but we never stop fighting. See you in the next video. Wishing you a peaceful day.